Hi, everybody. This is Ben, the CEO and co-founder on Melting Spot, and I'm very happy to host this webinar today with Simona. Hi, Simona. How are you?
Hello, Ben, and hello to everyone out there listening and watching.
Very happy to have you today on this Unlocking Success session. So we have plenty to share with you guys today. We're going to talk about customer education at Pennylane. I'll let you introduce yourself in a couple of minutes, Simona. I'll just remind our audience that we are live on different platforms. So you might actually follow this webinar on LinkedIn, on Melting Spot, on various other platforms we're using. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'll push all the questions to Simona as we go. So we're going to take the questions on the go. So don't hesitate to ask. If you have anything, experiences, insights you'd like to share as well, please do so in the chats. So as I said, I'm the CEO at Melting Spot, and Melting Spot is a customer education platform. So we help SaaS companies, just like Pennylane, but not Pennylane, create amazing learning experiences in their product. So we can help SaaS companies build customer academies, customer communities, and all this can be done in the product via products such as Melting Spot. So enough for Melting Spot. We are here to hear you, Simona. So I'll let you introduce yourself and explain a little bit of your background to our audience.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ben. Hi again, everyone. As Ben was saying, so I'm Simona, and I'm head of education at Pennylane. So I've been at Pennylane for a bit more than 2 years now, out of my 12 years career until now. And actually, in the past 5 years, I've focused on startups and on working on customer-related subjects, more on the self-serve education and help side in French startups. So I'm based in Paris. And in the past, I think something that makes sense for the competencies that led me to customer education is that in my career, I've always had a mix of project learning, customer orientation, as well as a bit of product management. So that naturally created that path towards customer education that we would talk about at large with Ben in the next 25 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Simona. Can you just maybe explain to all of us what is Pennylane exactly?
Absolutely. Very good point.
Why actually customer education was key or is key to Pennylane development today?
Yes, absolutely. So Pennylane is all-in-one financial tool for small and medium businesses as well as for their accounting firms. So it's, if you would like, it's a tool with two faces. So on one hand, we serve the businesses. So we serve the owners, the office managers, or the financial directors. And then on the other hand, we also serve their partners, who are the accountants. So what that means is that from the insider point of view, so from a Pennylaner point of view, that creates a bit of a complexity, because then we have different populations to deal with. We have small businesses that have 1,000 tasks in their day, and one of them is managing their finances. And then we also have financial professionals such as accountants who are in the tool, who are in Pennylane 8 hours a day, right? I mean, basically you open your laptop and that's the first thing you do, because you're all day in your accounting software. So we have a very large scope of audiences with different needs, with different expectations, even about how deep they need to go into knowing how to use Pennylane, or even how complex or simple Pennylane should be for each one of those audiences. And in that sense, then customer education makes sense because we need to scale. Right, so that's the keyword. You need to scale because you have a large variety of audiences, a large variety of modules, of functionalities. And that's a complexity that you cannot really deal with with humans that you cannot really deal on a one-on-one basis. So the goal of building a customer education team topic within Pennylane was to make sure that we can scale the way we empower, onboard, and we teach really our customers, be it on the SME side or on the accounting side, how to really get the best value from Pennylane. So that's the sense of our existence.
Okay, great. Apart from Pennylane and like just let Pennylane aside from our discussion, what's your definition of customer education? If you had to give one definition to all of us, what would be this definition?
It's funny you said one definition because I was just going to say that it will be different in every company, right? Something that I love saying is so it's actually on every single one of our slides. Every time we talk about education, Pennylane internally or externally, what we say is we build better users. And I think I shamelessly stole that from someone, but I couldn't figure out who that was, so I couldn't cite them. But thanks for that citation, because it's really the purpose. So you mix different types of formats and scopes in types of like training or empowerment. So that could go between like live training, self-serve resources, communities, help center documentation, knowledge bases, even technical docs. And actually what your goal is to make sure that the final user learns how to do what they came to do.
Okay.
So that's like at large, it could actually have different phases. It's at Pennylane, within the customer education team, we focus especially on self-serve, right?
Okay.
So we don't deal with live training. We focus on self-serve. We have different teams that deal more with the live orientation of training or onboarding. And our goal is to manage the platform. So we have 3 platforms. We have an academy, we have a forum, we have help center, and then we build all the content that is around it, so that then goes to those different platforms to different populations, and we try to make sure that it reaches the right audience at the right time. Are we successful? We hope most of the time, but that's actually the essence of our job.
Okay. So basically, you are upskilling your users, end users, and accountant users. You just talked about the content. I think it's really something key when talking about customer education. Content is key. It's key.
Content is king.
But content is king when it comes to customer education as well. Who is in charge of creating this content in your? Is it in your team, or is it in the marketing team, or is it a mix of the 2 teams?
Very, very good question. Or in more teams. Actually, I think maybe at this point we can share one of the slides, Ben, that I shared with you with my team, so that could put a bit of concreteness into what I'm explaining to then share who is in the team. So, hello everyone, that's my team. They were lovely to let me share their faces with the world. And so actually, what you see is that in our team today, so it took us around 2 years to build it. It's finally stable and it's great. What you can see is that we divided the team in 2. So we have half of the team focuses on content. So you see on the left, we put focus content, and then the other half focuses on what we call platforms.
Okay.
Right. So we have indeed, so Sophie and Sarah, who are both responsible for a cohort. So either the firms, that's the accountants, or the SMEs. And a huge amount of their time is spent building content, but also figuring out what the needs are, talking to all the other departments that you mentioned. So it could be marketing, it could be PMMs, it could be product managers directly, it could be customer success or the partner success, which for us is the same, but for the accountants. There could be different content creators. So our goal is to make sure that we know everything that exists, that we create what doesn't exist but needs to be there. So we need to figure out also what needs to be created. And then we deliver it to the right audiences. And in that sense, we go more towards the right side of my team. And before going there, there is also in the middle, you can see Manon, who is kind of like in between, because actually she is handling our help center experience. And also, she's spending around 60-70% of her time also writing, because the help center is very, well, consumes a lot of writing effort. And then including the help center, we also have then the academy and the forum. And so I have program manager Francois, who is responsible for the academy experience. So he manages the platform. He makes sure that all the links within Pennylane make sense between the like data marketing or client-facing teams, and that every client has the right access, right? And then Olivia has a similar role for the forum. And we also have our two great apprentices who help us for everything that is linked to forum moderation, or everything that is beautiful in terms of design is also part of our team. And that's also a key role, because with that much content, with that many platforms as well, we're quite heavy on the need to design both UX and UI.
Okay, great. I have plenty of questions just looking at this org chart. But one question is about forum. We will discuss more in details the stack you're using. But do you have a moderation issue? Like a lot of SaaS, when considering launching a forum, are a bit scared about having like kind of haters in the forums. Is that something you experienced, or you want to say to everybody, don't worry, it's not a social media, it's a private forum?
It's rather the second part. So I think internally we had this kind of objections or fears, if we can call it that way, that maybe people would start complaining too much, that maybe they would be disrespectful, that maybe we're opening Pandora's box. So what we see is that, I mean, it is a professional place, so people are respectful. And in terms of moderation, it's not really about moderating their behavior. It's more about moderating almost their impression of the brand, and making sure that when they ask a question, they get the right answer. So we're more focusing on that part. Of course, from time to time, it happens that somebody was a bit upset because they couldn't do something, and then they would express it. But like, still, we even have great super users. A lot of effort goes on also nurturing our super user program, and they quite often start defending. When somebody starts being more on the negative side, they would defend Pennylane. And then again, sometimes it would be them who would be a bit more challenging, because, well, they've been with us for quite a while and something is not working as they would expect it. So then that's absolutely normal. You're managing users, you're managing humans, and so you also have human connections with them. And in the end of the day, everybody is happy. So it's not that scary.
Okay, cool. Let's rewind maybe a little bit and talk about the days when you actually joined Pennylane. So that was almost 2 years ago, I think.
Exactly, 2 years and a bit. Yeah, 2 years and 2 months ago.
2 years ago. I think we all understood why Pennylane was motivated in launching a customer education program. And it seems to be a very good strategy for you guys. But at the very beginning, how did you just handle this project? What were your first decisions? And what kind of advice would you give to some of us who are interested in launching a customer education program? What are the do's and don'ts you would recommend to a SaaS company about to launch such a customer education strategy?
Right, that's a lot of questions. Let's see what we can share. So when I joined, maybe I think I shared one more slide with you, so maybe that could be a nice base to explain a bit the steps of kind of like the life cycle of customer education. This is a slide that's inspired largely by thought industries, by the way. So I just modified it a bit to fit with our reality, but that explains quite well visually the steps we went through. And when I joined 2 years ago, so first of all, I was fortunate to have quite a lot of support from the comics. Comics, that's quite French, so from the leadership team. So from the beginning, I had the trust that we do need to scale our training efforts, that we need to scale our customer experience. We already had some initial articles on the help center. So that was already existing. Some product managers had started writing, also some people from the customer teams. There were already live trainings, which happens absolutely naturally. And I guess many companies would agree with that, as when you have a client and when they have a question, and then you start offering those. So you can imagine that we were at the very left part of that life cycle. At the very beginning, so what I started doing is, yes, like figuring out how Pennylane works, right? It's an organization. At the time, we were already 200 people. So you need to understand also how the org works, who does what, or who has what kind of interest. So I think my time was spent on three main topics. So one of them was connecting like with people and connecting the dots of how things work, instead of coming and saying like, okay, this is how we should do things. The second one was making the strategy, so building this kind of a vision and strategy for the next months, years, to make something that makes sense, but that doesn't exhaust us either, because that could easily happen when you launch a new program. And then the other part was doing really in terms of finding those quick wins. Also, well, you have to prove the value, right? So that's also always a challenge when you start a new program, a new project, a new job. At the very beginning, what I remember looking at that site as well was that our help center at the time was private. So you couldn't search for how to do an invoice in Pennylane in Google. You could search, but you wouldn't find the article. Right? So you couldn't find the article. And for me, that was a missed opportunity, because we target small businesses. We go wide. We go very far. And the habit of users today is to search in Google. So you couldn't find us. And then I figured out that it was nobody's very strong opinion to have it closed, but it was an option. It was a decision that was taken when there were like thousands of other decisions to be taken. So I said, okay, like let's revisit that. So we changed that at the very beginning, and then we could see that like, very quickly the numbers also started going up in terms of visits. And actually, that's quite satisfying, I should say, in terms of when you have these kind of platforms being help centers, academies, communities, like the numbers, and when your audience is growing, of course, when your user base is growing, all those platforms, they're growing as well. That's almost, if you want, like a bit of motivation, a bit of ego boost. Also to say, okay, things are moving. Of course, it doesn't mean that everything is perfect. For example, we've seen that there was quite a lot of growth, but things such as activating, let's say, users on our academy were quite painful. So people would go to our academy platform, but they wouldn't open the courses. So, and then you start building really projects which are very typically like a typical project. For example, when you would need to understand what's going on, you would call your users. And I think at Pennylane, we're quite lucky that our customers want to talk to us, so that's cool. And then it's enough to call 3 or 4 customers, and they start repeating actually the same insights to you. So you figure out that in that example at the very beginning was that our course was very oriented towards onboarding, and the advanced users were saying, well, it's not for me. I have nothing to learn. But actually, the platform was changing every day, literally every day. So, of course, they had something to learn, but we needed them to rebrand it. and not to call it discover Pennylane, right? But to break it down into modules so that we could bring them a bit more into that course. There's still some that think that there is nothing for them, so that's an ongoing work, right? It's a wheel that never stops running, I think. But these are like clearly, I think, the very first quick win to start with when you start with customer education is if you include help center articles in your stack of customer education. That's clearly the first area to go to. And then I would say it would be to select a specific cohort that has quite a lot of demands in terms of questions or in terms of even learning. So like for us, we have our accounting users. They require learning. So for me, that was a bit of a surprise. Like we didn't even have to push them the learning; they came to look for it. Okay. Right. So the question is just not to spread yourself too thin and to start doing everything you want, or to even try to be always perfect or always up to date. So that was something that at the very beginning caused us a lot of stress, to always say, oh, well, like our screenshots are not up to date, our videos are not up to date, and that would always be the case. So my advice would be okay with things not being up to date, as long as you focus on what is more important, as long as you know what are the priorities, and that you focus on them and you build things one by one.
Okay, great. I'm going to take one question from Adam. Question is, can you talk about your strategy for the decision on how to display your content? On-demand video vs live webinars, or step-by-step instructions, screenshots, video tutorials, whatever. How do you decide how to display your content in the academy, in the forums?
Well, I love the question. So
I have another question related to this one. Do you prefer or do you make sure you offer written content, video content, audio content, or did you decide to offer just one written content, for example? Is it important to have a variety of format as well?
All right. Great questions. Actually, that's also linked to that life cycle and that fourth part which we're focusing on right now, the personalization. So to answer the question about how we choose the format and then how we display it, let's put it in that sequence. So how do we choose it? Actually depends on the objective and who is the final user. So whether it's written or video would also depend on whether we need to reassure someone, whether we need to show something that is complex, or whether we need to create some step-by-step guidance, such as a very technical kind of a guidance of adding your I'm having the term in French, but let's say adding a new client on Pennylane, there are very technical steps to follow. So in that case, we would do a written document rather than video, because the video would be very heavy to produce and it would be out of date in a few weeks. So, and also in that situation, we would even go to say, okay, we do have an article which is online and is referenced and is always up to date, but we would also build a PDF, because the PDF can then be shared to everybody within the same company. And we're human beings, we like to print things out, and that's fine. So, we like that. So at least we can make sure that it looks pretty, right? So we do frame it in a beautiful PDF, and in that sense, we would select what to produce in which format. When it comes to fully self-serve online learning, so that would be on the academy, we do aim to have a variety of interactions. So the goal here is not to be passive, is not to be just watching videos, because in that sense your brain would not actually register what you're doing. So we try to mix with exercises, with different ways of discovering, and in that sense it's still up to the objective of that course, then from which we would break down and decide which content to produce. It's that's actually the heavy part of the content creation job, to be fair. And then how do we display that? So that would actually depend. And I think, well, from the very beginning, we had that strategy to say, well, it will depend on who is the user in front of us. So from the beginning, we had that distinction before we were personalizing, like more specifically. We had the distinction between the accountants and the SMEs. And what we had for the SMEs was much more, well, it was much shorter. Like we wouldn't show them the entire catalog because they were lost. And I mean, they didn't have time to think about what they need to look for. And we would more guide them and say, start here, right? Start here, do an invoice. And then we would embed the content within the product directly that would tell them how to do that.
Okay.
The accountants are a bit more different situation, and in that sense, it's actually something that we're missing today. Is one platform where they can see the entire richness of everything that is offered from our live training teams for the education self-serve resources, even services that we can provide, but they're not very visible. So it's something that today we're missing in the stack. And what we offer is then well, we focused a lot on SEO. So to make sure that when they look, so really when they Google for something, then they would find it. And then they could, well, they could go to our help center or they could go to the forum. But yeah, that's, you got into the problem of our strategy today, that everything is a bit siloed, platform by platform. And then the way we found around that was within the content that we have produced in each one of those platforms is to direct them at the right moment to go to the other platform when it makes sense. So like,
Okay.
I'm not going to repeat the same content if there is a help center article about it, but I would use the opportunity, if they're already in a course, to introduce the benefits of the help center and tell them, if you have a question, go first there, so they can build the habit before they contact us.
Okay. So basically, you built bridges between the three platforms: the academy, the forum, and the help center. I have plenty of questions, and it's already almost the end of this webinar. So we're going to be very fast in the last couple of questions. But what are the problems you faced in the early days and you keep facing today, if any? Or did you manage to solve all the problems?
Right. Well, maybe problems is a strong word, right? So let's call them challenges. Let's call them challenges. I think something that I underestimated was the need for, well, the time for collaboration. So the time to connect to other teams and to actually the amount of other teams that we would need to connect to, because actually customer education or self-serve experiences is by definition extremely transverse. And we work with, so we are situated in what we call partner success. So that's my reporting line as well is to Alex, who is leading that team, and for which I'm super lucky because he's a great supporter of the cause. But actually, we do work with customer success, with product, with marketing, with data, with finance, with sales, literally with all the other teams. And so, what is extremely important is to be, as a leader, it's very important to know what is happening with each one of those teams, to know how you can help them, to know how they can help you, to make that work in a fluid way, to make sure that you have processes that are the perfect balance between working but not too heavy. And so this is an ongoing task. So I would say, like, a problem would be if you didn't leave enough time from your like personal job description and even the timing of your teams for that necessary collaboration.
Okay. So that's really something you need to pay attention to, ongoing attention to. Is there a team that was hard to convince of the benefits of all this customer education program? The marketing team, the product team. I guess product team maybe had was very involved at the beginning because they had to embed or integrate the whole customer education tools inside the customer experience? Was it complicated to convince the product team, for example?
To convince, not so much. I would say what's complicated is to figure out the process. So it was hard to harmonize the way we work, because they also have their way of working, and depending on the squad they're working with, that would differ. So again, like as this transversal team, there is a bit of an expectation that comes with the fact that, well, I mean, you have the head that is called customer education, so there is the expectations that you need to figure out what changed, let's say, right, or what changed in the product. And what was hard was to explain that it's impossible task. It's an impossible mission to know everything that has changed in the product, but also in the business plans, in the pricing, and then in the customer life. So I would say that convincing them about the benefit is fine, but convincing them about the value of the time of every single person is the hard part.
We have a question on the value here from Tom. Is asking, how do you relate increase in adoption or retention to a specific or a particular action taken or a specific content?
Lovely
Is it
question, Tom.
possible for you to make this link between your actions and the adoption rate skyrocketing?
Quick answer, no. Quick answer, no. So that's a big part of the job as well, to figure out how the analytics would work, and something that we're measuring mostly is actually the impact on contact rate. So we call that conversation per user, and what we can relate to specific campaigns or courses is if we like compare to cohorts, all other things being equal, what was the change of this cohort that followed the training on the academy for their contact rate versus the other. So that's something that we managed to get. It's a positive result, by the way, right? So I won't get into the numbers. When it comes to adoption, so at first we were a bit maniac about trying really to get those numbers. And then actually, at some point we realized, well, it's clear that it is helping, right? If your user doesn't know how to use your tool, they clearly won't adopt it. So at the very beginning, when everything is going very quickly, so we, for example, were like 4 years old, so as a company, and at this point, it's a question of, okay, let's focus on the impact that we can have right now, and then we continue building up that machine to figure out the adoption and the specific action. But it's a very, very hard part, and especially connecting all the tools is crucial. So connecting all the tools between themselves, well, and within your general database is extremely important. So we're on it right now, and what is pretty cool is actually to be able to manage your clients in an account management way, and to see, well, and also add it in their health score to see what have they done in terms of self-serve resources, or even are they engaged in the forum, have they done their learning, and actually we are just getting into that part right now.
Okay, cool. So you still have some work to be done.
Yeah, plenty.
Two last questions as a conclusion, maybe, Simona. The first one is, would you be able to share an inspiring benchmark for you in terms of customer education? Is that one company you've been benchmarking like more than others?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we all have our favorites, and actually it's a question I love asking during interviews when I recruit for my team, to see if they want to look for it. And first of all, I would say that with the CE Lab, so with the Customer Education Lab, that's a podcast. So first of all, that's like the Bible of everything customer education. So there is a lot to learn from that podcast. So that's my commute preference listening tool.
Okay.
And then when it comes to companies, so I have a very, very strong preference for the way things are done at Miro.
Okay.
In terms of easiness, how everything looks integrated in the same place. You find what you need. It's done. It's done in a very in a cool way, in a very welcoming way. And that's quite often a benchmark we're looking for, especially in the way that they do videos or different kinds of interactions. So, too much an inspiration.
Okay, cool. And all in all, is there just one advice you would like to share with us? Just one.
Just go for it. Seriously, go for it. Well, when I talk to folks who are just starting or thinking about doing something around training, self-serve education, or the way that they use in their company, is that they get quite overwhelmed by the mere volume of what is in front of them. So the advice would be to pick a problem, measure that, and solve it. So no need to start with building a huge academy with certifications, with badges, with trophies and gamification at the start. So that
build on top.
So, exactly. So just build little by little, and things would build up with time. And the funny thing I realized when I was building the strat for this year was that we were following almost by the book without knowing, because I don't look at that slide all the time. But actually, every time I look at it, I'm like, okay, so we have advanced. Of course, there is so much more that we can do of what we have already, what we had put for the year before. But that's that follows pretty well.
Okay, cool. Okay, I think it's going to be time to just let our attendees go back to their business, to their homework. Thanks a lot, Simona, for everything you shared. Very insightful to me, even though I'm pretty aware of what you've been building for the last 2 years. But it's always a pleasure to learn from you. So thanks a lot. Just a very quick introduction to our next webinars. We will host other webinars dedicated to this topic, customer education. And the next to come, I think, is with Debbie Smith. I think, Simona, you know her. She's the president of the Customer Education Association in the US, I think. I might be wrong, but that's something like that. And she's been in customer education for the last 20 years. So we will learn a lot from her as well. So just connect to this next to come webinar. And we have also sessions with Gong, Front, and other amazing startups. So don't hesitate to register to the other webinars. You just need to click on the live sections of the platform if you're on CS Nation. And otherwise, we will promote the events on LinkedIn anyway. Thanks again, Simona. Talk to you very soon. And to all of you, I wish you a very good day. Bye.
Thank you, Ben, and thanks everyone for listening.